This was the historic moment in June when Egypt's military leader, Mohamed Tantawi, officially handed authority over to Mohamed Morsi, the country's first elected civilian president. This month, Mr. Tantawi was back for more ceremony with President Morsi, but this time it was to mark his retirement, a retirement forced upon him by the president he had welcomed not 2 months earlier. His imposed departure is one of a number of senior military staff exits declared by President Morsi. The move is seen as an attempt by the president to assert his position as the new centre of power in a country where the army has for so long dominated all aspects of Egyptian life.
This does not mean that Mr. Morsi has completely subordinated them, but I think the terms of the relationship have changed. I think now the military have agreed to stay out of politics. There are probably certain areas where they will want to have a say, for instance, like relations with Israel or Iran, but normal day-to-day politics will be left to the president.
Recent security lapses in Sinai are widely regarded as having triggered the move. At least 15 Egyptian soldiers were killed when their base was attacked by a militant jihadist group. Within hours, President Morsi had begun his cull, which has included not only Mr. Tantawi, but also the former Chief of Staff, Sami Anan, as well as the intelligence chief and the governor of North Sinai.
Within the military itself, there was a feeling that there was perhaps incompetence at the very highest level, and there was time for change, for new blood to emerge, to take the lead, and for ultimately what are an elderly group of men that have controlled the country to move out of the way. We're seeing the removal of the Mubarak generation, and we're seeing the emergence of a younger generation that is willing to lead the country perhaps on a slightly different path.
Observers say that an astute President Morsi has succeeded in making political capital from the disillusionment that has grown within the ranks of the army during the past few decades of military rule.
The removal of Tantawi and Anan and the separation of the military from politics is precisely what the Egyptian military may want, because it feels that in a sense its image was tarnished during the transition period, that it got embroiled in politics and has been accused of abuse of human rights during this period. There has been very little change. The military feels in a sense it has not played its rightful role, and power was vested at the very top, so there was very little opportunity for promotion of officers and so on.
But the move, which in effect grants President Morsi full executive and legislative powers while parliament remains dissolved, has split opinion among Egyptians, particularly those worried about the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic organisation that helped bring Mr. Morsi to power.
I think many Egyptians are pleased that Mr. Morsi has imposed his authority. Having said that, I think there are also many people who are worried about Muslim Brotherhood control, who do not know what it will mean for the future to have an Islamist government. The Brotherhood and Mr. Morsi have been ambiguous about many things, from press freedom to the arts to women to the status of the Christian minority.
Of particular concern are recent attempts at media control, both the disruption to independent news organisations and sweeping staff changes at state-owned outlets. But others say fears that Egypt is slipping back into authoritarian rule are overplayed.
You need to also clarify that what's happening in Egypt is his attempt to roll back the power of the previous regime's control of the state media, and the people that are being removed were those that were part of the old regime and those that propagated not only anti-brotherhood propaganda but essentially propagated the message of the old regime. So his battle today that's seen as a clampdown against the media is ultimately part and parcel of rolling back the old regime.
But to avoid further clashes in what is an acutely polarised political landscape, President Morsi will need to present quickly and clearly policies that build on his claims of inclusiveness. The military may have taken a step back, but they retain significant business and economic interests throughout the country. And it will require far more political transparency before Egyptian society can disengage fully from its deep-rooted military past. Seb Morton Clark, Financial Times.